It's the Direct Response Podcast. I'm your host, Travis Ketchum, founder of Campaign Refinery, joined today, as always, by David Cartolano from Wealthy Inbox. How's it going, my man?
Hey, how you doing?
Doing good. So, this is probably going to be a relatively quick one, but if you're here, it's because you're curious about the idea of email buttons. And, I'm not talking about like I voted or, buttons like that. I'm talking about ones that actually go in your email and have some form of call to action in them. And so I want to talk a little bit about when they make sense, when they don't, what are some considerations when you're designing a button that are important, as well as encourage people to be able to grab a link in the description down below where we give you a code sample of how to do your own button and make one that's actually effective. So, David, are you team button or team no button when it comes to emails?
Oh, man, I am team. Let's take a look at the brand of the business and see if a button makes sense, but also buttons could decrease deliverability. So most of the time I'm team no button.
Yeah.
That's it.
I hear you.
Yeah.
So
So
I tend to agree with you. I'm generally team no button, but there is a time and a place
absolutely.
where a button makes sense, and I think the context is usually my first filter. So, for example, while I'm usually team no button, in a workflow of joining a webinar and something like that, I actually kind of a little bit more favorable towards buttons because we're usually trying to get them to launch a piece of software to join the webinar, right? And for some reason in that, a button feels more like a UI element when it's baked into an email. And so it's sort of like preparing them that there's going to be like, they got to launch Zoom or GoToWebinar if you're an ancient like me, or anything like that. It's like, hey, I'm opening software. Like that
Right.
context in my brain makes a little bit more sense than just a link to a sales page, which feels more natural because it's going from content to content. Do you ever approach it like that?
The way I approach it is I use buttons when the software allows. Of course, that's a huge consideration. When I know that the person isn't having deliverability problems, because if and that's something that we're definitely going to talk about. If it is a more aesthetic brand and they have a webinar or they do have a software or even a YouTube video, I'll take up the YouTube logo and I'll put it on the image of the YouTube video as if they're clicking the YouTube play button to bring them to the YouTube video so they can hit the YouTube play button. That was very cyclical, but yeah, like it makes sense. I do it very, very rarely. Because I also have the opposing camp of if you're in B2C and people aren't as tech savvy and they're past the age of 40, 50 and they have trouble understanding like what their computer is. These are people that might not understand to click a button. They might not, they're like, okay, well, where do I go? And you have to be very obvious with whatever text you put in the button to hit this thing. So I think I'm still more on the no button side. I see the use case for it, but you gotta be so careful because some people are willing to buy like right now with money in their pockets, but they literally just don't know how. So I don't want to make it any more complicated.
Yeah. So let's talk about a couple of things, but I want to start with the deliverability aspect because that's something that I agree with you on, but I think it doesn't really sort of enter a lot of people's thought process and think about, well, of course I can add a button to an email. What's the big deal? So I got my feelings, but David, why should someone think twice about a button if they're worried about deliverability?
So emails kind of go through a TSA where Google or Yahoo or AOL, they go through the email, they check the contents of it and see if it's cool or not. They also take a look at you and see if you're cool or not. And if they already don't think you're that cool and people aren't engaging with your emails and people aren't clicking and opening and replying and doing all that stuff and you're just kind of sending to people who aren't really that into you, then the email TSA doesn't like that. So they already got their eyes on you. And if they open the email and they see a bunch of extra, we're going to get techie here, but HTML or code in order to make the email look pretty, and they see some extra stuff, they might not like it. It makes your email suitcase a little bit heavier. If there's more stuff inside your email suitcase, the more the email TSA might go, hey, we actually there's too much stuff in here. We don't like this. Maybe
Well, what's
we'll
that dark spot on the X-ray?
What's the dark spot in the X-ray? Is that a blade sticking out of your toothbrush? You know, they're going to take a look. They're going to be a bit more suspicious. So if you're already not in the best of graces with them and you're not monitoring the data to make sure that you are in Google, Yahoo, AOL's good graces, then maybe a button isn't that great of an idea. And I can promise you, I get these questions a lot where it's like, oh, should I have a button or should I have a link? I'm like, are you doing $1 million a month? And they're like, no. And I'm like, then that is not the question you should be asking. Like that's splitting hairs. So if you do
Instead,
want to make a button,
you should be
great.
wondering about like, what should I say and who should I send it to?
Yeah. What should I say? Who should I send it to? Is it going to spam or not? Like, okay, great. Let's optimize and systemize from there. So I think I answered your question, Travis. But so from a deliverability standpoint, it's another thing for the email TSA gods to look at, and I'd rather stay in their good graces and not push my luck. So when I do want to push my luck in other ways and add 60,000 links into a single email, they'll let me do it. Don't do that. But
Please don't.
yeah. If I am writing more promotional content or I am getting more aggressive with my sales message, my content's less likely to be flagged because I've just been a good sender and I've sent to people that are actually interested. And I've done all the tech stuff and I've played by their rules. So that way, when I bring in a suitcase that might have some strange stuff in it, they're like, yeah, but we know David. He's cool. I think this apple looks a little weird, but we'll let him have it. So
Yeah, so I think from my perspective, the thing to kind of reiterate here is like the team no button is sort of like the elimination diet, right? Like it's don't add things into it that might complicate and have an unexpected reaction for no good reason or no real clear benefit. That being said, I listed a few examples at the beginning. I'm thinking like password resets, launching software specifically, things that are generally UI driven. I think that it does actually make a lot of sense to give a little bit of panache to it, a little bit of design, a little bit of, care about how it looks more than just a link. A link works fine. But if you want to take it up a little notch, it's a long tail thing that you can, improve from the user experience perspective slightly. Now, if you are like, okay, Travis, David, this is an email I really want to button in. I think it's important for whatever reasons I've decided. Let's talk about what makes a good button versus a bad button. Okay. Because there are things to consider. This is where the how deep does the well go. So I'm going to rattle off a few that come to mind. We have them all listed down below in the article, of course. But there are things like, what is the size and weight and color of the font inside of the button? What is the size and weight and color of the button itself? What is the rounding or the EM or the kerning on the corners of the button? Is it a square button? Is it a softly rounded button? Is it a very circular button? Does that fit with your brand? Does that fit with the other experiences that they would have in the pipeline? What is the padding that you have above and below the button? How well does the button wrap on a small screen if you put too much text in there? Does it have a text with an icon or a glyph of some kind included with the text to make it feel like it's advancing to the next step? Is it like an arrow? Is it an emoji? Is it, like, again, I think less is more in all this, right? Then there's things like, does the button have a drop shadow? Please don't do it. Does the button have like any extra sort of adornment to it to make it seem and appear fancier for light, for reflection, for drop shadow, for curving? Like all these things matter. And then also, what is the contrast between the text color inside of the button itself for legibility, to actually read what the hell the button says, and then does that jive with all the other colors that you may have in the email? If you have plain black text, it's quite easy to make it match. But if you have a bright, colorful image that you've included to be eye-catching, and you pick like a neon yellow color for the button and white text for it, that's going to be hard as hell to read for a lot of people. And it's going to be distracting, and it takes away from the whole point, which is the button is usually supposed to be your call to action, which means it should stick out but not be in your face. It should be easy to read. You should understand about what's going to happen next when you click the button, and then like basically what series of events are you kicking off, right? Yeah. A lot of times this can be more easily solved by having a compelling line of text. Now, the most boring thing you can do from a usability standpoint and from a deliverability standpoint is to have a big old button that says click here. I know it seems dumb for me to say, but like if the button just says click here or even click here to XYZ, that's a weak button both from a marketing psychology standpoint and it is a weak button from a deliverability standpoint
Hmm.
because I hate to break it to you, mailbox providers, they don't love when you say click here. They might, they much prefer that you write something outcome or curiosity driven, something that doesn't just look like every other of the 9 billion links that they got today in their customer inboxes. That is, click here to learn more, click here to tell me to pound sand, click here to buy the thing, right? Like, whatever the thing
Yeah.
is, make it more interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe
And
it's a question, right? Do you want more? Do you want more emails in the inbox? Question mark, and the whole thing is linked. And people understand that by being a nice blue hyperlink, that this thing is going to take me somewhere. And if I'm answering yes, it's going to naturally want me to click on that, right? That's a lot more compelling than click here to get more email into the inbox.
yeah. And people also have to realize like we have smartphones now, and most emails are read on smartphones. I ain't clicking on my iPhone. I ain't clicking on an Android, right? Like so I've actually abandoned the whole click here because people use other technology. I would rather say,
Tap
grab your
here.
spot now. Like whatever context was above, check it out here and capitalize here and make it very obvious and make the link stand out. I feel like the same principles you use to make a button are the same principles you use to highlight a call to action that doesn't have a button. Like look with your eyes, make it big, make sure people can see it. You don't want it to be, you want it to be like a short statement that tells them that either drives their curiosity to get them to click it or hit it, right? Or check it out. Um, or I said curiosity. Or you just tell them like, hey, this is where you get the thing. I'm in a B2C industry where with very tech literate people. So if I tell them to do something, they have to like actually do it. I have to give them the X, Y, and Z of what to do in order to get the thing, or I'm gonna get emails saying like, I couldn't click it and my cat fell across my keyboard. So yeah, like make it big, make it obvious. Don't use weird coloring. Just because it's a hot pink. That might be your brand. That's great, but actually, like, take a look. Send the email to yourself on your phone. Take a look at it and say, is this obvious? Like, if I handed this to, um, my mother, would she be able to hit that link and know to hit that link? And if you're like, well, my mom can't do that. Like, it's like, well, that's most people. Most people are not marketing email business people at
Nerds.
all.
Nerds like us.
Nerds. I was trying to avoid that label, Travis. But yeah, most people aren't nerds. So make it stupidly simple and obvious, and occasionally even tell them like, hey, like you have to like hit the button, like click below or check it out below. Big obvious button. So that's my rant. Make it
On the
obvious.
on the on the color piece, I just really want to come back to this because when people elect to do buttons, the way that they usually go wrong is they're picking a color that is their brand, which may or may not be a eyeball retina searing color. And so instead of being obsessed with making it a branded button, unless you've carefully curated your brand buttons to look very much like call to action colors, take a look around the internet and you'll quickly
Hmm.
see a couple things. One is a lot of pages like go to Amazon. They have tested the ever living daylights out of the colors of their add to cart checkout buttons for a reason. Same with Google pages, etc. And not only have they tested them and they found what worked best for them that fell within their brand guidelines, but they have also, even if they weren't the right colors then, they are the right colors now because your users are interacting with those pages on repeat. And they have been trained that that is the color for checking out. That is the color for adding to cart. That is the color for signing up. And so whether it's right or not right isn't really up for debate here. What's up for debate is what makes them do the thing.
Yeah.
And what makes them do the thing is the thing that they're trained to do. And it's the pages that are getting billions of impressions. Like Amazon has already won. It game over. So
Hmm.
go pick one of their colors and roll with it and see how it works for you. You'll be a lot better off than picking the hot pink or mint green, color that just because it matches with your brand. Pick what actually gets people to intuitively understand it's a call to action and then actually click the damn button. Right? That's the
Yeah.
whole goal of the whole thing. So that's my little color rant. If you're going to do a button at all, which again we already talked about, we have feelings. This is almost like a Drake song. We got feelings about how we feel about this. But pick a color if you're going to do one. Pick a color and contrast that is easy to read, that isn't doesn't sear the back of your retinas, and hopefully matches the well-established color schemes of what a button that does something looks like on the internet. If you do that, you'll be better off. And you can grab the code down below, and you'll see a little, hex number or a hashtag. If you see it as a hashtag, it's not what it is, but you might see it as a hashtag and a string of letters and or numbers. That is the color. And you can use any online color picker to say like, what is the color, the hex code of Amazon's checkout button. You will find a little string of letters and numbers. And if you copy that and paste that in where you see a bunch of letters and numbers in the code we give you, voila, you have a button that is the same button color as Amazon.
That's lovely. All this to say, yes, like check out Campaign Refinery's article on they did a fantastic job on the button colors and how to build your own button. It is not my forte, but I do get the button color questions so often. And at the end of the day, I think if it takes you an entire day to create your own button, I believe that your time should be used elsewhere. That's a little more profitable. Just saying from experience, people don't buy because of the button color. People buy because of what you have. It's only when you are processing so much data and so you have so many customers and you're making so much money and you need to figure out how to squeeze every last half penny out of your advertising spends. That's when the button colors and things like that start to matter more. So I would say follow the principles that you've heard, take a look around the internet and see what's already working, and don't lose your mind over this kind of thing. At the end of the day, like, pick it, get it done, move on. If you think button color's the thing that's stopping people from buying, you got another thing coming.
Amen. All right. Well, on that, who knew we could talk for 19 minutes about email buttons, but yet here we are. So check out the article down below, grab the code, modify the color hex there to match your wildest dreams. And if you want an email platform that will give it the best shot of that hitting the inbox, usually buttons are off by a default, but you can use the same code we provide in the article to embed them if you so choose. Check out campaignrefinery.com. And David, what's good?
Yeah, if you have a newsletter and aren't interested in reading about button colors, you can go to wealthyinbox.news where I talk about growing a newsletter and preparing it for sale that an investor might want to pick up someday. And I don't know, maybe you'll find somebody with the right button color, but I you won't find it in my content.
If you're trying to send a newsletter where the button color on the deposit into your bank is green, go sign up for
Go for
wealthyinbox.news.
it.
All right. Thanks so much, you guys. I'll catch you later.